Incentives matter. We heard about this all morning today. But incentives, again, have to be designed. As I said, sometimes you think you can throw money at things, and it's not as easy as that. One of the things we did right when I came was, because energy is very expensive, and it's even more expensive for us, it's the second largest line item in our budget. We said we were going to choose LED lights, replace lights in the library, that's the picture down below, with LED lights. The project cost came out to be 45 lakh. It's a big structure, it's used 24 hours a day. The first hurdle was the people who were supposed to implement it, who got the money to implement it, were not really interested in doing so. These are very wonderful people, they're wonderful people, but this is the PWD of LUMS. They build projects. Conservation is not what they're trained to do. We now have, for 3 months, finished that. Every month, our saving is coming to 2.75 lakh rupees a month in those buildings only. We actually ended up spending just under 20 lakh rather than the amount that was budgeted for it. That means a payback for a year and a half. And the incentive here was not just for the user, the incentive here was for the board, for the finance people. So you have to think about who are the players, what are their payoffs. So those are the type of things. I think actually the third, final one didn't come, but that's fine. Let me end with the fourth point was the targets matter. And the targets matter in a very simple way. My colleagues at LUMS haven't fully figured it out. One of the things we just did was we went and signed up for STARS. STARS is a sustainability tracking initiative globally for universities. My colleagues are very happy that we are the first South Asian university to do so. There's none in India. But what they haven't realized is what we've signed up for. We've signed up that we will make all our environmental information public for the whole world every year. And the reason that matters is because once you have targets, institutions can push to implement them. And those goals matter. So I'm sorry you have to have taken long, but the point I'm making is that when we think about institutions, the lessons we've learned globally and the lessons we've learned locally are both relevant to the lessons to apply nationally and to the lessons that we need to take to Rio.
I would just request you that please bring reforms, make straight, honest policies through one window, and ask the government that utilize, invite local investor first, and I'll ask USA, the funders, they are investing in government sector. My first objection is with these agencies and these NGOs, that they are encouraging government sector and they are putting their money with them. They don't encourage the private sector. Those are really interested and those are really serious to invest in this sector. So I will request you that please note down my concerns.
The first intervention was asking for the investments and the sectors that need to be targeted for that. I think the logical sectors are transport, energy, forestry, agriculture. We are focused on that within our particular document also. And we heard the WAPDA chairman speaking this morning about hydropower. I'm quite concerned to hear about your story on how you wanted to develop a small hydropower project. You could not get a buyer out of it. We've had, I think, 2 or 3 power policies in Pakistan. To my mind, I think the first one, at least I know, had a buyback agreement for renewable energy projects. So I'm quite surprised that this has happened. But I think that's one of the key things over here, that any policy or strategy is as good as its implementation and a government commitment to implement the set policy.
The UN entities need to scale up support for education, training, small business development, continual improvement in resource efficiency, and access to innovative financing. In addition, they should provide practical tools that support intellectual property rights and the critical complementary know-how to enable the transfer, adaptation, widespread use and dissemination of green technologies. It is critical that local actors have ownership of the innovative process and the new technologies. and that local and indigenous knowledge is part of that change. Of course, that's the UN language. But I think leaving the UN language aside, I think the issue of intellectual property rights has come up in the international discourse, in international debates. And WIPO, on its part, has mentioned that it is trying to make some efforts to make it easier for developing countries to have access to the information on green technologies. What kinds of technologies are available, what have been the experience, and so on. So there is something on the WIPO website regarding the green technologies and so on. But of course, that is not sufficient in itself. I mean, accessing the information on green technologies may not be sufficient. In addition, what has been discussed and myself involved is the idea of having some public funding mechanism, perhaps at the global level, to buy off some of the critical green technologies that are extremely important for rapid deployment, similar to the situation of critical medicine, intellectual property rights over critical medicine that can save millions of lives. In those cases, you need to have an international mechanism to buy off those intellectual property rights and then allow widespread deployment. So the ideas are floating. Whether these things can succeed or not really depends on the active engagement of all of us in the real process. Rather than, if I may say so, rather than feeling the constant sense of victimhood, you know, we are the victims and these are the international guys and so on, I would plea for an active engagement, calling for a systematic change in the global system.